Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're jumping straight back to the year 1260 to look at a colossal clash that literally altered the trajectory of human history. We're talking about the Battle of Ain Jalut. This was the exact moment a deeply ingrained myth of absolute invincibility was permanently shattered. It's an epic story of incredible odds, brilliant strategy, and world-altering consequences. So let's just dive right in. Before we break down the specific tactics of the battle itself, we really need to set the scene and establish the atmosphere of sheer terror that defined this era. This was quite literally the day the world's most fearsome army lost for the very first time. Prior to this battle, the Mongol forces were widely considered completely unstoppable. We're not just talking about a regular army here. They were perceived as a force of nature, sweeping across continents. Entire empires would just surrender at the mere rumor of their approach. Section 1. The Growing Mongol Terror. To truly understand the immense stakes at Ain Jalut, we first need to trace the terrifying momentum of the Mongol Empire as it steamrolled toward the year 1260. Looking at this timeline, you can really feel the impending doom spreading across the Islamic world. In 1258, the Mongol commander Hulagu Khan utterly destroyed Baghdad and killed the Abbasid Caliph. This was the catastrophic fall of a major cultural and political capital. The Mongol armies were advancing relentlessly. But then, early in 1260, there's a massive twist of fate. The supreme leader, Manka Khan, suddenly dies. This triggers a succession dispute that actually forces Hulagu Khan to take his main army and head all the way back to Mongolia. He leaves behind his commander, Kitbuka, in Syria and Palestine, and it's this sudden shift that sets the ultimate stage for our epic showdown on September 3, 1260. Section 2. The Battlefield of Ain Jalut. Here we find ourselves in Palestine in modern-day Israel for what is an absolutely incredible underdog scenario. Now, a crucial point here is the location itself. Ain Jalut literally translates to the Spring of Goliath, and I find it incredibly fitting, almost poetic really, that this specific historical turning point took place at a location named after Goliath. Why? Because the Mamluk army of Egypt was marching out to face a terrifying giant of their very own in the Mongol war machine. So going into this, the Mamluks faced stark numerical disadvantage. The Mongol army, led by Commander Kitbuka, was boasting a formidable force of somewhere between 20,000 to 25,000 troops. Meeting them was the Egyptian Mamluk army. They were led by Sultan Saifuddin Qutuz and his brilliant commander Baibars, but they were fielding only about 12,000 to 15,000 troops. So they were marching into battle vastly outnumbered against an enemy that up to this point had never been defeated. Section 3. Baibars' flawless strategy. The massive question staring the Mamluks in the face was simply this. How exactly does an underdog army defeat an invincible, significantly larger force on the open field? Well, the answer lies in an absolute master plan. Let's break down how this trap actually worked. First, step 1. Commander Baibars positioned his heavily armed Turkic Mamluk cavalry, along with his highly skilled archers and heavy weaponry. Then comes step 2, and this is where the real genius shines, the feigned retreat. They deliberately fell back. Historically speaking, this is actually one of the most difficult maneuvers to pull off without causing a very real panic among your own troops, but they executed it perfectly to bait the overly confident Mongols forward. Finally, we hit step 3. Once the Mongols were drawn deep into the trap, the Mamluks launched a devastating two-pronged ambush right from the sides, while Baibars simultaneously closed the circle from behind. It was like a giant puzzle snapping together. Section 4. Defeat of Invincible Mongols. This strategic masterstroke by Baibars immediately shifted the power dynamic on the battlefield and set the stage for a brutal, definitive climax. Once that trap snapped shut, it was game over. The historical sources note that despite fighting with immense bravery, the Mongol commander, Kitbuka, was completely encircled by the Mamluk forces, and he was ultimately killed in the fighting. With their commander dead, and literally thousands of their soldiers either killed or captured, the Mongol army was utterly crushed. This was it. This was the very first major, catastrophic defeat for the previously unstoppable Mongol military machine. Their aura of invincibility was just gone. Section 5. Broad impact on history. The shockwaves from this single tactical victory on September 3, 1260, didn't just stay in Palestine. They completely altered the geopolitical map of the world and permanently halted a massive global conquest. You have to realize the immediate cultural and psychological impact of this was absolutely staggering. This victory became a profound symbol of Islamic resurgence. In fact, deeply relieved Muslim historians of the era described this incredible underdog triumph as direct divine intervention, explicitly calling it help from Allah. The psychological weight of finally defeating the Mongols just cannot be overstated. It basically breathed new life into regions that had quite literally been preparing for their own destruction. When you look at the ultimate butterfly effect of Ayn Jalut, it's just massive. First off, it completely shattered that myth of Mongol invincibility, which broke their morale. Second, it successfully defended Egypt and Syria, which in turn saved the Islamic holy sites of Mecca and Medina from total destruction. Third, it sparked the meteoric rise of the Mamluk Sultanate. Their prestige grew so much that Baybars actually ousted Qutuz later on and became Sultan himself. But wait, it gets even bigger. This victory emboldened Berke Khan of the Golden Horde to openly ally against Hulagu Khan. That sparked these intense internal wars that permanently fractured the entire Mongol Empire. And because the Mongols' southwest expansion was halted right here, it allowed the Mamluks to later focus on and continuously defeat the Crusaders. The historical domino effect of this one battle is just mind-blowing. As we wrap up our time in the pages of history today, I really want to leave you with this thought to ponder. Knowing the terrifying momentum of the Mongols, the threat they posed to global cultures, and the internal fracturing that followed this defeat, what if the Mamelukes had failed to lay that trap that day at the Spring of Goliath? How drastically different would our modern world look today? It's a fascinating reminder of how a single tactical choice can echo through centuries. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll